These are the 2026 LUSU FTO elections, and I am joined by Kate Bracewell, who is running for president. So, you are currently studying design, but tell me a bit about yourself, your manifesto, what you do in and outside of your degree, and, why you're a suitable candidate.
Yeah, so I'm running for president. My main 4 key manifesto points are safety for students. I've launched a national safety survey that's gotten over 200 responses so far from around 25 different universities. Hopefully through that I'm able to put Lancaster in a context in comparison to other universities and be able to understand what students think Lancaster does well in terms of safety and what the Students' Union does well and what students feel as though there could be done better about Lancaster, especially in comparison to the way other universities handle student safety. My next point was make your degree feel worth it through the curriculum transformation program. Obviously, CTP is a very big issue right now, but I think a lot of students are struggling to feel as though their degree has worth and coming out of their degrees feeling employable. I think students come to university to feel employable. You get a degree because it's how you think you're going to get a job, but then you leave university and it's just as competitive as it would be if you didn't have a degree. So my goal would be to include more employer-led projects within your degree to combat the fight to feel employable, because students shouldn't feel pressure to have to fight for internships and placement years when they're already paying tuition to come out of university feeling employable. So I would want to include more employer-led projects through CTP. And my next point is better recognition for execs. Student execs work so hard. I see it firsthand. I see it all over. Student execs work so incredibly hard, and you should come out of your time as an exec feeling as though it has been a net positive. You shouldn't come out of it feeling a lack of passion for what you do, burnout. The university needs to recognize that students and execs on societies are what's building the culture that is keeping a lot of people at university. I know a lot of people who didn't drop out because of societies and JCRs, because of that kind of community, and the university needs to do better at recognizing the kind of hard work that students put into being execs on societies. So I would want this through transcript recognition and more clear and timely support from both the Students' Union and the university. And my last main point is better campus and transport accessibility. So next year, the annual Unirider bus pass is going to cost £499, which is pricing students out of accessing the education that they already pay for, their culture and campus life that should just come as commonplace, with the fact that students are already being priced out of living on campus. Second and third years are encouraged to move off campus but then can't afford to come to university. There are days that people don't come to uni just because they can't afford the bus. That shouldn't be the case. So I'd like to lobby the university for a campus, for a transport access fund, and negotiate with Stagecoach more lenient pricing for students.
Yeah, great. First, I think briefly we kind of touched on, obviously you've had a lot of experience. You've worked on, you're the current Lonsdale JCR president. I think you've worked on the Student Experience Committee.
Yes.
And you've worked on things like the UA and President's Committee as well. How has that experience and how has that kind of shaped you kind of as a person, but how has that also made you a suitable candidate for the role of president if elected?
I think it's given me a lot of chances to witness the way that the university is run at a higher level. So sitting on the Student Experience Committee especially there are literally 3 students on that committee, 4 sometimes, and then it's a room full of other higher-ups at the university, and it's a very out-of-touch experience in my opinion. For a Student Experience Committee, don't actually have a lot to say about students or their experience, and when the students in the room speak, it feels as though we're not actually listened to. So it's given me a good opportunity to see how Rory, current Students' Union President, handles himself in that situation, given that he is another voice for the students. But I think it makes me a good candidate because I have the experience already of understanding the way that the higher-ups at the university view students, talk to students, see our experiences and how they talk about us in a way that doesn't feel as though they actually understand how students feel. A student engagement framework was proposed at the last Student Experience Committee, which not a lot of them seem to understand was actually a very important thing. There's a lot of university staff higher up who don't understand that students know what they want. Students understand at that, like at the base level, that this university experience is theirs. And I think, coming from that perspective is definitely beneficial, because I see the way that the university staff don't understand what students want, but think they do and act as if they do.
Yeah, great. Now, moving on to your manifesto. So one of your first kind of key main points was making Lancaster safer for students. And you mentioned that you'd launched a national safety survey.
Mm-hmm.
My kind of question to you is this. Based on the results of the survey that you've put out, and kind of based on the campaigns that have already happened with the current wellbeing officer, Leah, who has done a lot of work, certainly I think with lighting in town, how would you kind of initially build off of that, and then how would you kind of use the results that you've gotten so far from your survey, how would you use that to build and make new campaigns to improve safety for students in town?
Mm-hmm. I think Leah's campaign already is brilliant. Lighting is an issue that I've identified within my survey. A lot of students, especially in Lancaster, feel as though there could be more lighting, especially in residential areas where they live. But it's not just about more lighting, it's about the type of lighting. Big looming overhead street lamps actually don't improve feelings of safety because they're so high and looming. Whereas if you were to have like strip lights or motion sensor lights, a lot of people have said that would make them feel more safe directly outside of where they live. So I think building on the lighting campaign from Leah would be a great start. But also, I've identified in my survey, a lot of people aren't aware of the symptoms of spiking. They're aware of how to prevent it or how to assist in stopping spiking, but actually identifying the symptoms of someone when they've been spiked is a struggle to a lot of people because there's no education on it. A lot of it, it's hard to tell the difference between someone who's been spiked and someone who's just too drunk. So I think I would like to start educating people on what to do, especially if your friend has been spiked, and identifying key symptoms of being spiked to ensure that people are kept safe. So I think that would be a good framework to start with.
Yeah, great. Now, we do have to talk about the curriculum transformation program,
Yes.
which I know has been controversial at times. And I think one of the key things that it has certainly highlighted has been kind of a clear lack of communication at times between the university, the students' union, and students, with students feeling like they're not really getting an input or kind of being seen at times, it could be argued, and then the university just disregarding things that the students' union says. If elected as president, how would you hope to improve communication kind of between all three of them, ensuring that students feel seen and that the SU is listened to when it comes to future big projects?
I think a huge thing that I've identified from talking to a lot of different people is the lack of communication. So even just from LUSU, there are so many different channels of communication that you find yourself quite often getting lost in a feedback loop. You email someone at LUSU or the university and you have no idea where that email goes. It could take months to get a response. So what I would like to start doing is having open forums, having the Vice Chancellor, the Students' Union, the FTOs all in a room where students can come and ask them questions in person. They can get consistent and timely feedback from where the curriculum transformation program sits, establishing a timeline of to where it's going to be established and how far along in the timeline they are, I think would make students feel a lot more confident in its integration, because the fact that they have gone back on it already proves that it wasn't ready to go out and they should have listened to students more.
Yeah, great. And you mentioned obviously they've walked back on things. I think most notably that instead of a semesterization, we're continuing with terms in the 2026-27 academic year. There's no longer going to be a winter examination period for, it's not going to be a mandatory winter examination period. And they're still keeping the 24-point aggregation system.
Yes.
Firstly, I'd just kind of like to get your opinions on kind of what has happened in terms of, how do you think this is affecting students? How do you think it'll affect kind of students coming in terms of like their confidence levels of, okay, this is what was supposed to happen and it's not? And then secondly, how would you kind of work with the university to ensure that confidence in the CTP and confidence in its effectiveness, how would you ensure that that is effectively kind of communicated to students?
Well, I think it's honestly just outrageous that they've gone back on it. And it proves, honestly, that it wasn't ready at all, and there was a complete lack of student consultation about its implementation. The fact that it's only been gone back on because of Steve Decent as well just proves that it wasn't ready, but no one was talking to each other enough about it. I think it's a shame as well. You've got so many prospective students that are going to be coming to this university under the guise of this 2-semester system, winter examinations, and then it's just being taken back. The day before they announced that CTP was going back on it was the final day of physics interviews, where so many students were given verbal offers and accepted those verbal offers under the guise of 2 semesters, winter examinations. So I think it's going to be really hard to build that trust back up with students, especially new ones coming to the university. But I think just open and transparent communications, as hard as we can push for open and transparent communications from the Students' Union and from the university is as much as can be done in the starting period. But I think better signposting of what's changing, when's changing, establishing a very strong timeline, and building students' confidence up gradually, brick by brick, is probably the best way.
Yeah. Now, we have also mentioned student consultation, and I think very recently the student engagement framework, I think you mentioned earlier, has kind of been officially set up. How, if you were elected president, would you continue to use this framework? Would you kind of, I think a lot since it's been set up, it hasn't been quite highlighted quite so much. I don't think quite as many people know about it. Would you kind of intend to highlight it more so that you got a greater kind of variation in student consultation, so that ideally all degrees were represented, but as many different degrees and departments were represented within this framework?
I think not just one kind of communication and consultation with students works. Depending on the type of feedback or project that's ongoing, you need different kinds of feedback at different levels. So I think making sure that it's clearly established the different kinds of consultation that would be needed and where students would be involved and what kind of students you'd need to talk to. Because obviously talking to your average student is a very good start to getting an understanding of their experience and their thoughts on changes. But there are so many other different kinds of students. You have to think about equality and diversity when you consider who you're consulting. Talking to JCR presidents as well, just talking to JCR presidents, is not the solution. Because on Student Experience Committee, only 2 JCR presidents sit. We're not a good example of your average everyday student. We see a lot more of the inner workings of the university and the Students' Union, so have a better understanding. It's much more worth it getting experience from students who are just on the ground and experiencing everything firsthand.
Yeah, great. Now, moving on to a few of your other points. I feel like we've talked a lot about the CTP here. One thing you've been looking at, and one thing I think you highlighted in your manifesto, was recognition for exec members and kind of societies. You said that they do a lot of work. How would this look in terms of, what would be offered in terms of this recognition? Would it be something on what is currently our 24-point aggregation score? Would it be a separate kind of, a bit like the Lancaster Award? Would it be something separate? How would it work?
I think allowing exec and society positions to contribute highly to the Lancaster Award is beneficial, but also maybe a separate award itself. But my main point on my manifesto is allowing it to be included on your transcript. There's a reason when someone's an exec on a society, they put it straight on their LinkedIn. It helps you look a lot more employable. It shows how passionate you are. It shows how much time and effort and love that you put into what you do. And I think the university just needs to recognize better that students are the ones building the culture that is keeping people at the university. Yeah,
great. Another point we've talked about as well has been transport. And kind of certainly transport costs. You mentioned the annual uni rider for next academic year is £499.
Yeah.
This question is kind of in 2 parts. The first part kind of relates to Stagecoach, and I think you said you'd like to work with Stagecoach to try and lower prices, if possible. How feasible and likely do you think this is? Obviously, Stagecoach is this gigantic company, and it could be perceived as quite difficult or quite unlikely that you're going to get them even to get them to a negotiating table, let alone to negotiate prices. And kind of secondly, I think you mentioned a transport access fund. How would you work with the university to set up and maintain this so that it's something sustainable and something that is offered every year, regardless if you were elected president next academic year but then didn't rerun, how would you ensure that it's outlasted your time as president?
So for the Stagecoach question, I understand that's a very hard point to make. But I think so in my degree, I do a lot of data gathering. I do a lot of talking to people. It's a lot of problem solving. And I have very good ideas of how to gauge students' thoughts and opinions. And I think if I can go with a large enough data set and with enough passion and drive and backing from the university and the Students' Union, I would hopefully at least get through to a table to talk to someone. Even if it's a long and tiresome fight, I'd want to do it because it's not worth pricing students out of accessing their education. And the Access Fund question. So the Sports Access Fund that Emily Woods gathered is from an anonymous donation from an alumni. So I'd like to probably work with more alumni and the university themselves. I think if the university is willing to help fund it, because again, students are being priced out of accessing an education they already pay a lot of tuition for. I think the university needs to recognise that it's causing a lot of detriment to students' well-being, their mental health, to accessing their education. There are a lot of people who just can't come to campus every day for their education, and the university needs to recognise that that's detrimental.
Yeah. Now, we talked about supporting students, and one of your other manifesto points that you talked about, I think, was utilising the LUSU food bank more. Again, sorry, this is a two-part question. Firstly, again, how would this kind of look? How would you better utilise it? And secondly, is there anything else that you would do, if elected, to help students further, not just with kind of the food bank? What else would you also incorporate to support students?
So I think signposting is a huge solution. So every college has a food bank that is topped up by their SCR, but not a lot of people know about it because it's not signposted well enough. Lonsdale is launching a charity donation to food bank initiative. This is to a local food bank, it's not to the Lonsdale Food Bank. But I think signposting and letting people know what services are available to help them through cost of living is the first step in that solution. And then to add to the food bank regularly through support from the university and from the Students' Union. LUSU is in a prime position, central campus. Students know they could just walk in and take something if they need it. And then additional cost of living support. I couldn't include it on my manifesto because it's 250 words is not enough, but continuing the work already being done on rent freezes and looking at the price of accommodation on campus to support students, because you shouldn't be priced out of living on campus. Again, it should be just something that comes as standard with your tuition. Yeah.
Now, I think one of your final kind of key manifesto points was communication with the Students' Union, particularly LUSU Finance.
Yes.
My kind of question, this is kind of going to sound really niche. So at the minute, as far as I'm aware, they are looking at kind of redesigning kind of how societies, at the minute, the SU page and the kind of the dashboard where societies look at things like memberships and kind of other stuff is a tiny bit outdated. I think they're looking to incorporate that along with kind of online banking and kind of being able to access a lot more of the finance side of things a lot easier. Firstly, how would you kind of help to implement that? Would there be things like training to go alongside it if this kind of new system is implemented?
Yeah.
And secondly, how would you improve communication with LUSU Finance in terms of, like office hours, or would it be, on a forum kind of thing? How would that work?
So currently, if you want to get through to LUSU Finance, there are probably about 3 different emails you can send something to. You can go in person, there are drop-in sessions, but all of that takes a lot of time, and it's not always the best solution for society executives. And I know with the changes to in-house banking, that's been really hard for a lot of society execs. And I think the LUSU website itself needs a dedicated section for supporting execs better. I know from a lot of people, when they've needed something or they don't know how to do something, they've emailed someone at LUSU, it's taken a month for them to be spoken to, or it's taken a very long and confusing set of emails to actually understand how to do something. So I think more clear signposting on the LUSU website, a dedicated section to helping student execs understand what they can and can't do, how they do things, just a checklist of reaffiliation and LUSU Finance, safety training, risk assessments, all needs to be much more easily accessible to students. Even if it comes in just a PDF training package, it would be so much more useful and probably make students feel a lot more comfortable in their exec positions. Because again, being an exec should not be a detriment, it should be a net positive.
Yeah, great. Now, finally, is there anything else either from your manifesto or your candidacy that you would like to highlight at all?
I think just the fact that, I have a track record of delivering results. Lonsdale College had the highest engaged Freshers Week that we've had in over 3 years now. I mean it when I say that I want this change to happen, and I will not stop until there are results.
Well, thank you ever so much for your time, and thank you for the interview.
Thank you.
These are the 2026 LUSU FTO elections. I'm joined by Sam Burgess, running for president. Now, you are studying environmental management here, but can you tell me a bit about yourself, a bit kind of what you do outside of your degree, and then a kind of a brief overview of your manifesto?
Of course. So as my degree title suggests, I love nature, I love being outdoors. So this includes hiking, cycling, swimming, anything really outdoors. And I'm also a really keen bird watcher, and so I volunteer with the RSPB. I also, because I care so strongly about the environment, I want to help to protect it. So I'm part of several campaign groups who work on different issues around sustainability and biodiversity. So I've been part, on campus, I've been part of Fossil Free Careers, which is a group I helped set up, and also plant-based universities, as well as being involved with lots of different environmental societies and doing lots of things with LUSU Green.
Great. Now, you've mentioned all of that experience, setting up all those campaigns, working with plant-based university. How has that kind of shaped you as a person, and how would you say that experience is relevant to the role of president that you're running for?
So, through working with campaigns, a lot of it's about compromise. So we come in with some ideas, with some demands of what we'd like to see, because we obviously have quite strong beliefs, and then we're trying to make that work within the university context. So a big part of being a campaigner is communication. I've worked with members of the SU, with members of university management, with the catering team, and also just talking to lots of different students about why we think the issue we're campaigning on is so important and why we think that they should be supporting us. So these communication skills would come in really handy. If I was to be elected, I'm confident speaking with a huge range of stakeholders, students and staff. And I'm also used to negotiating and finding compromises.
Yeah, great. Now, moving on to your manifesto, you kind of had 6 main points. And I'll start with the one that you had on anti-misogyny and an anti-hate policy. So my first this is a bit in a few parts. So the first kind of part is, where, from your perspective, has the university fallen short on this front so far? And if elected, what would you either do differently or do better to counteract these issues on campus?
So one of the big ways I think the university has fallen short is just having a conversation and raising awareness. I think a lot of the misogyny and discrimination that I see within student groups, it's not purposefully people going out of their way to cause harm to others. It's just a lack of awareness that other students might need different treatment or might need sort of different things to be put in place to make them welcome in a space. So so I think one of the big things that both the university and the Students' Union can do is talk about the rise in discrimination and misogyny and different ways that students can address it. So I would like to see compulsory training for all student exec members on this issue, as long as like wider wellbeing issues.
Yeah. As part of this manifesto point, I think you briefly also mentioned the reporting system. Now, from people I've been talking to, please correct me if I'm wrong on this, but there has been mixed reviews about how the reporting system works, the response times of things. What is kind of your view on the reporting system, and if you were elected, is there anything you would change about it, anything you think that is drastically wrong about it?
So my view is that it's insufficient, that as you mentioned, it doesn't respond quick enough to student concerns, often quite serious student concerns. It's often not very obvious to students how they can report an issue, and often the follow-up isn't transparent. Students don't know if any action has been taken, and often action isn't taken. So I think the system needs a full review and reform. This is something that I'd like to do in conjunction with as many students as possible. To get student input, work with the wellbeing officer, our liberation and campaign officers, and ensure that it's sort of a central part of what LUSU provides to students. So making it a prominent place on the website, putting out comms about it, and ensuring through being a trustee, one of the important things is you're holding staff to accountable. So I would make sure that we have dedicated staff members who are responding to these concerns.
Yeah. Now, another one of your main points has been on affordability. Namely, you want to try and improve transport, access to transport, and reduce transport costs, and then also looking at reducing food costs and rent. And on your manifesto, I think there was a mention of possibly reducing senior leadership team salaries. Now, I don't know if that was a genuine point or kind of a half joke. If it was a genuine point, what do you think the feasibility of reducing their salaries is? And furthermore, in addition to a possible salary reduction, how else would you hope to improve affordability for students, both kind of living on campus with on-campus rent prices, but also people who are travelling in on transport, either taking the bus, stagecoach? Would you be interested in talking to them about things? But overall, kind of what methods have you kind of considered so far?
So I haven't asked Steve Deason on UVC if he'd be willing to cut his salary. Maybe that's something you can ask him when you interview him.
Maybe not. We'll see.
But I think regardless of whether they accept it, it's more about just pointing out to them and to students that the money is there if the university were to see any issue as important enough to invest money into. There's other examples of that. They're spending, I think, $2 million on refurbishing the Ruskin building.
A lot more. I think, from what I heard, it was, 14 million in various different grants.
How much did I say?
2.
Oh, I think I meant 12.
Oh, it could be easily be 12.
Yeah, I think 12.
I have the memory of a goldfish, so.
Me too. I think, so they've obviously put effort into securing this money. Another thing they're spending $2 million on, which is where I got confused with, is the £2 million nuclear energy simulator. And again, their 6-figure salaries of senior management. There is money if we were to want it, and the university was to want to invest in something. So I think the new Vice-Chancellor is very willing to understand students and look at our concerns. So I think putting money into affordability and cost of living is something he'd be willing to do. I know already that the university is engaging or willing to engage in talks with Stagecoach because they've realised that there's too many cars on campus and there's not enough space. So that's definitely something that I would continue pushing for, and working with whoever from the university is representing them to make sure we can get reduction in bus prices.
Yeah. Now, kind of also on the topic of rent, I know, and as I'm sure you're aware, the current president, Rory, has worked quite hard to get talks between UPP, who own roughly 2/3 of the accommodation on campus, in talks, with the students' union and with the university to look at making at least some of the accommodation that is on campus more affordable and possibly looking at price reductions. Are these kind of discussions something you're going to hopefully continue? Are you going to continue to look to try and make more price drops and make accommodation more affordable? Is that something you're interested in kind of continuing discussions with? Yeah,
absolutely. It's the core reason why students are struggling to get by is because rent is going up and up, and it's become sort of over 50% of the average maintenance loan, and it's just a level that's unaffordable, meaning that students struggle to eat and to go out. So it has been difficult so far engaging with UPP. I know that from talking to Rory and his reports at Union Assembly, but UPP have shown willing to move to change some things. So one of the things that Rory mentioned to me when I asked him about it was UPP are not willing to reduce their overall income, their overall profit. They can't do that because they're a private company, and well, they say they can't. But what might be willing to do is to raise some of the more expensive accommodation and reduce the cheaper. So to have more cheaper accommodation, but potentially slightly more expensive accommodation. So that's one of the pathways that I would look into. Also, if UPP reduce their cheapest accommodation, that means the university can reduce theirs because they have some sort of deal at the moment. Course. Yeah, so the university isn't allowed to reduce their prices lower than what UPP do. Whereas if we can convince UPP to at least reduce some of their accommodation, then that would give the university a lot more freedom to do the same.
Yeah, great. Now, moving on to another one of your points, you've talked a lot about campaigning. You've been active a lot in campaigns, and two of the kind of big campaigns that you mentioned in your manifesto were surrounding climate justice and around Palestine and the war in Gaza. Now, I just wanted to kind of give you an opportunity to expand upon this. Are you going to try and raise more awareness of these issues, or is it a case of you want to try and help Lancaster University alongside the Students' Union work towards better climate justice, reducing things like carbon footprint, and if so, what kind of methods would you use to ensure that happens? I believe very strongly in addressing our impact on climate change, and also the influence and the contribution that Lancaster University is making to the genocide in Gaza. And I think, along with many students, there's been studies that shown how many students are concerned about climate change, how many students oppose the fact that the UK is arming Israel. And I think, like many students, I'm frustrated that the institution that I'm paying so much money for and that I'm investing all my time into is not taking these issues and their responsibility in them seriously. So, for example, the university is 71st on the People and Planet's sustainability and ethical league table, which puts us at the bottom of what they class as 2-2 universities. There's a lot more information there about things that we can do better, including having more sustainable food, having reducing our careers or cutting completely our careers links with fossil fuel companies and with arms companies. And this is something that students want to see as well. They want to be able to afford sustainable food. They want to be able to go into ethical jobs. So I would like to both work with the university and also empower students to speak up, because a lot of students feel like they have no power on changing what the university does or on affecting these big global issues. Whereas as a campaigner, I know that we can make positive change, and therefore I'd like to work with more students, run trainings and empower them to speak up. Yeah, great. Now, another one of the things you've, I think, briefly touched on before, but another one of your key points has been an increase in support both for student leaders and also for campaigners. And I just wanted to kind of ask, how would this look? Is there any of the ideas you have in terms of the support, and is there likely to be any costs incurred with this? Or is that, what kind of variety of ideas are you considering and looking at?
So as a student campaigner, I've got 2 motions passed through Union Assembly. I found that process quite hard to do, especially the first time when I wasn't already a member of Union Assembly. And since the motions were passed, which included clauses about the union supporting these protest groups, we haven't seen much continued support. So I think there's a real lack in the union of somebody who has the skills and the experience and the capacity to support student campaigns. So the sort of support that I would like to see and that I know that I would have appreciated is regular meetings, someone from the Students' Union arranging meetings with university management, because often they don't respond to mere students, and using their platform as members of the Students' Union to advocate for the causes that we believe in and that the union has agreed to support, because ultimately as student campaigners, we're volunteers, we have limited time, whereas the Students' Union has more capacity.
Yeah, great. And now I think obviously being a postgrad student yourself, you can probably talk about a lot of your experiences firsthand. One of your manifesto points talks about a need for better representation for postgraduate students and also international students. Currently, where do you perceive the university may be falling behind, and how, if elected, would you better represent these groups of students?
So I see two areas where the university and the Students' Union are both falling behind, and the first is in providing community for postgraduates. So their grad college exists, but postgraduate students make up 24%, I believe, of the student population, and so putting them all into one college, there's ultimately, that's not going to be sufficient provision for all of them, and grad college is particularly more relevant to students who live there. So I've talked to lots of different postgraduates, and I work with them through my role in the Students' Voice team in the Students' Union, where I support students in building community. So I've worked with the PhD forum, and we're currently discussing ideas and developing a strategy to go forward to ensure that there is some sort of community there for postgraduates. And one of the main things that I would like to push for and work on, if elected, would be to reinstate the postgraduate study space in town, and also have a social space attached, because I think this would be a really good way for postgraduates to meet other postgraduates, especially those who are arriving in Lancaster after not having done their undergraduate here. It's quite isolating, so I think a social space in town would be really beneficial. And then also about international students.
Yes.
So many of the issues sort of overlap because most of our postgrads are also international students. But the reason that I sort of brought these two groups together is because they both face very different problems to undergraduates. And one of the things I didn't mention for postgrads is just postgrad voice, and there are issues that keep coming up when I speak to postgrads, and there's no one really to follow through and to say, okay, I'm going to take that and roll with it and try and work on it, because postgrads are so busy they often can't do that themselves. So for international students, I am aware that the current international student officer, IFAS, has done some amazing work over the past year or more that he's been in office, creating a forum for presidents of different societies to come together, discuss their issues and work on them together. And that's an amazing part of the Students' Union, but I don't think what they're doing is getting raised to higher decision-making levels. So I would love to be an advocate for them and make sure that their voice, what they come up with and what they discuss at these forums is actually translated into what LUSU does.
Yeah, great. And now kind of your final key manifesto point was on the art and ensuring that the arts in general at Lancaster are better showcased. How would you go about doing this if elected? Is there anything in particular that you would either change, do differently? What are your thoughts on it?
I think a lot of what's needed is just advocacy at the higher decision-making levels of the university, which the president is able to sit on. It's about challenging funding cuts and funding decisions about what we want to invest in. And so if we talk about LU Future and all the job cuts, the academic job cuts that have been happening, that's primarily affecting the arts subjects. The sort of building space that they have access to is quite inferior to what many other subjects like business and engineering have. And this problem extends to societies as well, who struggle to book flat floor space and who struggle to get enough funding for all the sort of technical equipment that they might need. So I think advocacy is a big, really important thing that could help these societies and subjects, and making the university aware of how important they are and that it's worthwhile for them to invest more into into the arts, because it ultimately doesn't just benefit art students, it's also a hugely important part of university culture.
Yeah, great. And now finally, is there anything else that I haven't covered or anything else you would like to talk about, either about your manifesto or your candidacy?
Yeah, something that I didn't manage to talk about, which is covered by my point on supporting student leaders, is the finance system in LUSU, which I think I needed to bring up because basically every student leader I speak to, they tell me that the finance system is not working for them. They've lost money, LUSU's lost their money somehow, they can't access their bank, they can't talk to anybody within LUSU to be able to sort out their problems. And for me, being part of Societies Committee, I've sort of seen both sides of the issue, and the biggest problem is communication and transparency between what's happening in the SU and the student leaders. So I think we need to reform the finance system, basically. We need to bring students on board, make it work for them. And we also need to be transparent to them about what's happening, the changes that are happening and how they can navigate them, because at the moment the system's not working for them and they're not even being helped to use it. So I'd like to see better training for treasurers and just more communication around that issue. Because student leaders, they're volunteers, as I said before, they shouldn't have to be fighting to run their society, which is what they often have to do at the moment.
Well, thank you, and thank you ever so much for the interview, and thank you ever so much for your time.
Thank you.
These are the LUSU FTO 2026 elections. I'm joined by Usul Kaboosle, running for president. So, can you tell me a bit about your degree, what you've studied, and kind of any relevant experience to the role of president?
So I do university management. I manage the university in my spare time. That's why I think I'm very experienced for this role. And yeah, I think I'm maybe the best president that LUSU has ever seen.
Great. Now, I'm going to move, I think, directly onto your manifesto, because you've promised quite a bit. So I think I'll just start from the start. Your first manifesto point was absolutely no confession pages. So obviously there's been controversy surrounding those. What are kind of your thoughts and opinions on confession pages, and how do you aim to kind of take them down if you're elected as president?
It's quite difficult to police things online. And I think if we can't kind of get a blanket ban, kind of making it known that we're not happy with these pages would be best, because I mean you've seen some things that have happened online that make people very uncomfortable. So I think there needs to at least be some rules in place to police these pages.
Great. And now one of your other points, which I think I might ask about the feasibility of, is you really want to extend Boland Tower so it's the highest skyscraper in the world. My question to you is kind of in two parts. Firstly, kind of structural. How do we think Boland Tower would survive being, over 1 kilometre tall? And secondly, financial. How would you aim to finance this infrastructure and redevelopment?
So I think it would just be able to stand. I can't see that it would need any other special infrastructure. I mean, it's Boland Tower, it's one of the best towers in the world. And I mean, financially, there's a lot of things obviously on my manifesto about money. And I think what we need to invest in really is a money printer as a university, because, we're in a bit of a hole right now, and we keep making these promises, and I think we just need to print more money.
Would you not be concerned with possible either counterfeiting or, someone either from the Royal Mint or the UK government being concerned with the fact that a university is printing its own money.
Maybe. We should just not tell them.
Right, fair enough. Now, one of the more interesting points is you're looking to ban all other clowns. I just want to kind of get your reasoning behind this. Why is it something like? Is there a disagreement with you and other clowns? What's kind of the backstory behind it?
Well, I'm really scared of clowns, and I, sometimes I see them on campus, and it makes me really uncomfortable. I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. No, it's fine. I'll move on. It's absolutely fine. I didn't realise it was so sensitive.
Thank you.
Now, one of the other points in terms of actually buildings is that you want a third engineering building. My question to you is, surely 2 buildings is sufficient? Surely when other departments as well lack funding and have quite old, outdated spaces that would be in dire need of renovation. So how would you kind of counter what some may see as kind of a third unnecessary building?
Well, I think 4 engineerings would be a good idea, with how amazing the engineering department is. And I think maybe a 5th would really help excel the department with, we need engineers now. I mean, there's going to be a deficit of about, even just electronics engineers, about 600,000 in the next 10 years. So I think really having 6 would, help promote people getting into engineering.
While I do kind of agree with that, my question then is both kind of finances and where are you putting these buildings? There are buildings, there's management school on one side of engineering 1 and 2, and then you've got the start of the LEC and LSE buildings on the other side, and then on another side still you've got Fields, the college and the lecture theatres. Where would you put these buildings?
Well, I think we could just put them on the other side of the M6 and just put a big bridge over the M6. I think, there's nothing over there. Why not?
Fair enough. Now, one of the kind of unofficial mascots of Lancaster has always been, I would say, Guinness the cat, who I believe has now moved. One of your points talks about making a mural in Alex Square. My question to you is this: how big would this mural be? Would it be a complete kind of replica, same size, dimensions as Guinness the cat himself? Would it be bigger? Would there be kind of a grand unveiling? How do you kind of envisage that going if you are elected president?
Well, I need to speak to the cat first. I mean, very, very picky about these things, and I don't want to get it wrong, But I think we just need to make sure that it's better than the Long Boy statue, and make sure that you can't saw it off and steal it, because obviously that'd be a very stupid thing to do. So,
no, definitely. Now, one thing students are certainly struggling with now is accommodation, rent prices, and also just in general a cost of living crisis. This question to you is in 2 parts. My first part is, if elected, would you do anything to support these students through a cost of living crisis, and if so, how? And secondly, one of your manifesto points is interested in halving the number of on-campus accommodation and doubling said price.
Indeed.
How do you think that would be received by students, by staff in general?
So to answer the first part, I wouldn't do anything because I don't care.
Okay.
And second of all, we've been raising the prices already, and I think, that they're going up to the roof. And you know what? Why not just aim for the sky? I think we can make so much money off of students,
Obviously the university does get some of that revenue. 2/3 of the accommodation is actually owned by another company called UPP, so they would be getting a large part of said profits. Is there anything you would do to try and prevent that? Anything you would change?
No. You're welcome, UPP.
Fair enough. Moving on now. One of the more interesting points, and one of the agenda, like the manifesto points that I think would be difficult to police, is you wish to ban joy on Tuesdays.
Yes.
Firstly, how would you go about ensuring that this happens? And secondly, why specifically Tuesdays? Why not another day of the week? Say, for example, I know everyone in general does not like Monday mornings. In general, you've had a nice long weekend and then you come back and usually it's Monday that everyone seems to be joyless and full of hate for. So why specifically Tuesdays?
Well, specifically, I hate Garfield the cat, so I think Mondays are great, and I think that cat is stupid. And, you know, I was born on a Tuesday, and it's the most joyous day of my life, and every other Tuesday since, you know, the first was the worst, the second was even worse, and it's been downhill since then, so.
Fair enough. Now, one manifesto point I could definitely get behind is this. You wish to play all the national anthems, where in graduate ceremonies the national anthem is played. You wish for that to be done on kazoos. Now, my question to you is this. Who would be playing the kazoos? And if so, how publicised would it be? Would we be filming or live streaming the events so that we can see the graduation ceremony as it's happening, so that we can also see, you know, this great moment when the national anthem is being played, possibly by someone as high up as the Vice Chancellor or other members of the senior leadership team?
So, of course it would be streamed on YouTube, of course. And I think there's a multitude of options that we could have here. We could have 5 people potentially from who are graduating, could put themselves forward. I think Steve Decent could do it. I think it'd be pretty decent. Up top. Yeah!
Oh, we missed. Oh, well.
Okay. Well, but yeah, I think it's open to interpretation.
Fair enough. Now, one of the things I think students have always been confused by, and there's been such a lack of transparency on, has been where the money from college memberships has actually been going, what it's actually been funding. Now, my question to you is this. One of your manifesto points is you want free college memberships. Now, while this would be appealing to students, it will obviously result in less funding, less money for the university. How do you intend to kind of counteract that loss of revenue for the university?
So I understand that it would be less money for the university. However, we don't even know where most of that money goes. So realistically, it might disappear, but where does it disappear from? We don't know. I mean, even if we trialled it for a year, we can see where that money has been going because they're not getting it anymore. And I think having free college memberships might make coming to Lancaster a bit more appealing. It might make people want to engage more with their colleges. And yes, the colleges themselves might be out of a bit of funding, but realistically, compared to how much is made from the membership fees and how much is made and how much is given to the colleges, it's really only a drop in the pond. And I think potentially that could come from somewhere else.
No, fair point. Now, one question on a more personal level. To you, I have to ask, what do you have against the South Spine? Because one of your manifesto points is you want a complete extension of the North Spine.
Mm.
Firstly, how would that work logistically? The North Spine and the South Spine aren't directly opposite each other. You would have to end up just bulldozing through buildings.
Yes.
And my second question is, what do you have against the South Spine?
So I have nothing against the South Spine. I think it's just silly that we don't have a uniform spine. And I think just calling it the Spine would not be good enough. So why not just extend the North Spine? And I think, yes, we may need to do some bulldozing, but that is a sacrifice I'm willing to make.
And kind of a second opinion, surely, at least from the perspective of logistics on this, it would be better to extend the South Spine, because the South Spine relatively just keeps going a fairly gradual pace upwards, and you'd only have to bulldoze through Bowen College, County College, and the Learning Zone, to name a few. Whereas what you'd have to do is you'd have to ultimately bulldoze through Spa, Costa, possibly build a massive, gigantic ramp going down through Finesse College, Fylde College, and through, you know, ultimately you'd have to pour a load of concrete, and it would also block a lot of the food courts, namely one of the most popular places to eat on campus is Sultan's. So kind of, what are the logistics of that? Have you kind of properly thought and weighed up the two?
No. I may need to speak to my advisor about this. I thought that might be a good idea, but you sound like you might be right. I need to speak to my advisor. I'm sorry.
No, that's an absolutely fair point. It's something that I just kind of had thought of, and I thought at the very least, if I bring it up to you, then you can think about it, and it means you can refine your manifesto.
Yes, thank you.
Of course. Now, one very kind of curious point is you want to create more outdoor spaces.
Yes.
Which I completely get behind, the need for kind of outdoor spaces and being able to, be able to smell the air, touch grass, so to speak. Doing that and kind of staying connected to nature is great. However, your method of doing so is removing the roofs off of buildings.
Yes.
Wouldn't this cause a problem with furniture getting wet? It would mean that there could be risks of flooding. Students would get wet quite often when it's raining, because as I'm sure you're aware, it can rain quite often in Lancaster. So surely there'd be a better solution possibly to removing roofs. What is your kind of reasoning?
Well, I mean, it's cheaper to remove the roof than it is to bulldoze the entire building, of course. And I think, there's lots of mental benefits to being in the outdoors. And even if that's when you're learning, you can feel the rain on your face and you can look up to the sky, and even though there's no sun there, you can just imagine have a great experience while learning,
No, it is a fair point. Now, one question I kind of have to ask is, do you in any kind of particular way condone violence? Because there's a couple of points on your manifesto that seem fairly violent. The first one being a free parking space available, which I completely get. However, the way to get such is a winner stays on boxing contest. So kind of how, would you particularly condone violence? Because you've also recommended that you remove college bars and then get the JCR presidents to fight for all 9. So is that in any way do you particularly condone violence, or what is your view on it?
I don't condone violence, but I do think that violence is marketable, and I think that would be brilliant for our university to bring in some money. Buying tickets, maybe you pay for this free parking space, you can pay to see people fight. I heard in my scan interview the other day, it was recommended to me by the lovely interviewer that this fight could happen in the parking space. And I think, who wouldn't want to see that, we need more money. Why not just market it?
No, definitely a fair point, but I think one consideration is two kind of considerations. Firstly, what do you think the kind of reaction to this would be? And secondly, who would you expect in this competition? Would it be academics, or would it be a case of it's students fighting for it?
So I think, first of all, it would be a free-for-all. If you want, you don't even have to come to the university. If you want that parking space, you can fight for it. And I think, I just think it'd be a great idea. And I think anybody that's concerned, suck it up.
No, fair enough then. Now, one of your interesting points, it certainly, I would say, goes against the grain of the current Students' Union president, is you want to, and I quote, quietly make approvals without telling anyone. Now, this Students' Union, and certainly Rory, the current Students' Union president, has fought for more transparency, more visibility, certainly, and more student consultation when it comes to big decisions that happen within the SU and within the university as a whole. So how do you think people are going to react to this, and how would you end up ultimately implementing this if you were elected?
I don't know, and I can't tell you.
Is that a case of it's confidential, or it's a case of you purely have decided you don't want to kind of share that information?
I could share it, but then it wouldn't be quiet. And that's something I really believe in.
Fair enough. As kind of a sub-question to that, is there anything else you would do or go about quietly other than just decision-making? Would it be remodelling, the SU, or what other decisions would you make potentially without the influence or opinions of others?
Well, I like to do things on a whim, so I'd like to think I just have ideas and do them without asking anybody. Especially if we're printing money, I can do what I want, which is ideal. So,
Right. Okay then. Now, one of your cost-saving recommendations has been self-service campus bars. My question to you is this: whilst yes, it would reduce staffing costs. Firstly, how would you go about getting alcohol? Because a lot of the staff are the ones who buy the alcohol on behalf of the bar. And secondly, how much trust do you have in students to actually pay for the alcohol that they are drinking, instead of just taking the drink or drinks without actually paying?
Okay, which camera? This one. I trust all students to be able to use the self-service that I will implement and pay. And I think, alcohol-wise, they can buy it themselves. And it's a community bar, you know?
No, that is a fair point. However, to almost seemingly go against cost-saving measures, you wish to build a £14.4 million throne room for yourself personally. My question yet again in two parts. Firstly, this is logistics. Where is this going to be placed? This sounds like an extraordinarily expensive building. And secondly to that is the potential controversy surrounding this. Obviously, we're in a cost of living crisis, and people could argue that that money could be better spent elsewhere on helping students get through this cost of living crisis, to ensure that the Students' Union and other societies can continue to operate as they are now for a number of years to come.
So I think that students can benefit from the money printing, but if they can't, then that's their fault, of course. And I think the best place to put it really would be, once the Ruskin, of course, is finished,
Yes.
we knock that down and put it there.
But surely my question then is, the Ruskin and the collection that is in the Ruskin, they've been given a large amount of funding so that they can keep the collection there, and they can renovate the building so that it's suitable to keep that collection there. What would you do with that collection that has been, funded essentially through grants and money given directly to the university? What would you do with that collection?
Well, it would go in my throne room, obviously, of course. It'd be mine.
Right. Would you allow visitors, people to come in and see the collection? No. Okay. Now, you've got kind of two final points. I'll start with the first one. Put bluntly, what is your vendetta against LA1, the club that was formerly known as Glow or Vibe? You've proposed to shut it down. Firstly, why? And secondly, what would you do with that building in place of a nightclub / bar?
So I don't necessarily want to shut it down. I just completely forgot that it currently is shut down. And I was going to make a point about it in my manifesto, but I got really confused with the name and I forgot what my point was.
Right. You proposed to shut it down, but if it's a case of a bit of confusion surrounding the fact that it's currently shut down, then...
Yeah, I got a bit confused after forgetting what the name was. I know it's a bit embarrassing, but I didn't know what else to put for V.
Honestly, it's fine. The campaign and their kind of reopening was fairly low-key. If it's any consolation, I hear their alarm system going off all night, so it's still broken.
Yes, I see.
So it's.
I might need to look into that.
Yes, it would be nice. Even with double glazing, I can hear it. So.
Of course, just for you.
Yes, that'd be perfect. Now, finally, a bit of a colourful note to end on. You've said yellow is the new grey. How are you going to kind of implement this? Is this kind of going to be a full-scale repainting of everything that is grey? Is it going to be everything that is new that would ordinarily be either, grayscale or painted as grey is instead painted as yellow? And surely it contradicts. You said you want to do this to bring joy to campus, and yet one of your other manifesto points is that joy is banned on Tuesdays. So,
naturally.
Firstly, how would you implement this policy? And secondly, how do you... My question to you is, does it or does it not contradict with your previous manifesto point of joy being banned on Tuesdays?
Well, I think the easy answer to that is that we repaint it every Tuesday. So we would repaint all yellow, repaint all grey yellow for the rest of the week. And then as soon as it hits Tuesday, we need to make everything grey again. But as soon as it hits Wednesday, joy is allowed again. And I think this is a great opportunity to make student jobs.
No, I definitely say, you know, having to do all of that painting would definitely allow students to get those jobs. Now, finally, I kind of just want to ask on a more, do not take this personally, some people could view your candidacy and your manifesto, they could view it and they could say that it's a bit of a joke or a clown show, if you will. You could argue that they're almost your haters, so to speak, people who don't think that you're serious about this. How would you respond to them? How would you respond to that potential criticism?
Wrong.
No? Fair point. Now, is there anything else final that you would like to highlight, either about either your candidacy as a potential Students' Union president, or is there anything else you'd like to highlight in your manifesto at all?
No, I think this university right now is a bit of a circus, and I think I'd be the best person to kind of, juggle around what needs to be juggled around. So.
Well, thank you ever so much for your time. It has been a pleasure interviewing you, and I wish you the best of luck.
Thank you.
So you got me there. These are the LUSU 2026 FTO elections. I'm joined by Christina Mallinson, who's running for president. So, you are studying politics and sociology, but tell me a bit about yourself, what you do in and out of your degree, and give me kind of a brief overview of your manifesto.
Okay, so yeah, I'm Christina and I'm in my third year studying sociology and politics. I'm currently in the role of Deputy Union Assembly Chair, so I help chair Union Assembly, which is sort of like the highest governing body that students can go to and take part in. I've just finished my year-long term of County College President, so I was College President of the JCR Exec at County, which I really enjoyed. I also do county netball. I've also done county women's football as well, as that league was started up last year. So my main three manifesto points are making sure women's plus safety can improve on and off campus, making sure students are led and integral to decision making at the uni, and my third one is setting up a travel access fund for students to help out with travel and the costs of that.
Yeah, great. Now, obviously you mentioned kind of your experience as the current deputy chair at Union Assembly, and you're the former president, JCR president of County College. How has this kind of experience shaped you as a person, and how relevant and how suitable does it make you for the role of president if elected?
So honestly, I actually got into the JCR Exec. I was elected in since before I became a registered student at the Lancaster University. I sort of did a co-options before the summer of my first year. So I've been in and involved in the JCR and Student Union for nearly 3 years now, about 2.5 years. So I've seen lots of different full-time offices and how they operate. I've been part of lots of different student union-led decision making and meetings, so I was part of college redesign meetings. I've done lots of union assemblies, obviously, so I've seen how the student union operates and how the decisions are made and how different full-time officers work and what their work sort of consists of, I guess. I've also, being president, I'm sort of used to leading a team of officers. I'm used to working with different people. I'm used to forming connections across the university with lots of different student leaders as well as student union staff and members. And it's also very it's gotten my public speaking skills to quite a good point, I'd like to say. So I'm quite confident. I enjoy public speaking. I enjoy meeting new people and talking about different issues that different people face in university. So I believe that my experience does make me the ideal candidate just because of the reasons I've listed.
Yeah, great. Now, moving on to your manifesto, kind of the 3 key points you have. The first one I want to talk about is women's plus safety.
Yes.
So the current wellbeing officer, Leah, one of her main campaigns has been around lighting in town. And obviously she's worked closely with a lot, the president, Rory, and all the other FTOs to kind of achieve this and kind of improve safety. Would you consider kind of furthering this campaign? And are there any other methods or any other campaigns that you would consider to, as you've mentioned, you want to really kind of improve women's plus safety both on campus and in town. So, what would you do?
So I definitely look at carrying on the work that Leah has started with the street lighting. In town, I definitely notice, like I live at sort of a different end of town that's quite far up a hill. You definitely do notice it obviously gets quite dark, and when you live so far up a street, you do get a bit sort of cautious looking around all the time when there's not that much street lighting. So I definitely continue that. The main point that I wanted to bring across is going at it from a sort of informing and educating way. So instead of teaching women, obviously, defend yourselves, this is what you can do, take precaution, I'm sort of looking at preventing the issue from the bottom, like from the root of the issue. So something that I maybe would look at implementing is for like execs for societies and sports teams, when they do their training at the beginning of the year, maybe implementing even a 20-minute compulsory session on women's plus safety, and it's sort of like similar to the Men for Change workshops they've been doing, something like that. That's a compulsory session that, say, even if at least 2 members of each exec on male and even non-male sports and society execs have to do as part of their training at the beginning of the year, I think that would be really good and that would be really cool. I'd also look at meeting with local MPs to discuss sort of policy and campaigns they can implement. As the government have literally announced it's a national crisis, the violence against women and girls. So I didn't think I could run my campaign as I am without having that on my manifesto, because it's important to me. But yeah, I'm definitely looking at implementing policy that is just targeting, informing and educating people. I think that's what we need to do to help contribute to solving the national issue. So.
Yeah, great. Now, one of the big topics certainly related to this university recently has been the curriculum transformation programme.
Yes.
It has been very prevalent. And I think one of the things that it's kind of highlighted is that up until recently, there has been a very kind of distinct and clear lack of communication between students, the Students' Union and the university. Mm-hmm. My kind of first question, so to speak, is what kind of would you, if this is a kind of a hypothetical, what would you do or what would you have done to improve student consultation on the CTP as it currently stands?
Yes, so again, one of my manifesto points is student-led decision making, so improving the communication and the involvement of students in these decisions. So I think the first port of call would obviously probably be to have a meeting with the Vice-Chancellor, as I know he's just recently come in and he's had a lot to do with sort of restructuring a little bit of the CTP. Obviously we've had emails out about it and things. So I think the first thing I do is meet with him and sort of lay down the plan and be like, I want to continue. Obviously I know there's been work done this past year for involving students more, and I'd sort of say I want to continue that work and improve it. So I think things like, obviously as president you would have seats on things like Senate and Council, and there's also the Student Experience Committee, which are all very important decision-making bodies. So I think it'd be even having like open forums or an open space, like the week of those sorts of meetings, to make sure and promote it. Say, students, come along, give your input on this, let's talk about what we want, let's talk about your experience. So it would be sort of involving students that way. So if I can't get students more seats on these decision-making bodies, let's make sure I'm taking in student feedback to the maximum I possibly can by inviting them to sort of meet with me before I go into these meetings and pass on advice and ideas. And then there'd also be, okay, if and when CTP is happening, it's about providing student support to cope with that. So again, meetings with me, and we could launch wellbeing initiatives, wellbeing campaigns, sort of if our students could come and talk to us about issues they're facing or if they don't quite know how to cope with the changes. So yeah, I'd go at it from an angle of let's have open forums and open spaces to invite students to bring their ideas and their concerns about it, and then we as officers can take them forward. And then after that, it would be a case of, okay, now let's support students with this and let's focus on ensuring that they can cope to their degrees being tailored.
Yeah. Great. Now, your third kind of key manifesto point, I think I might end up talking a few follow-up questions with this.
Yes.
Your third manifesto point was about improving funding for travel, specifically your kind of student travel. My kind of first question on this is essentially how? Yeah. Would it be a case of, you've mentioned, I think, something like a travel fund available to students? Yeah. But would you also consider, for example, if there was an opportunity, would you negotiate with Stagecoach, who are the major bus provider around here? How would you kind of implement this?
Yeah, so there's been ongoing negotiation with Stagecoach for quite a while now. Obviously, they got rid of their £3.50 return ticket, which I think is really impactful to a lot of students. So the main goal of it is, obviously, we've seen the massive success we've had with the Sports Access Fund recently. And I believe if, you know, we can achieve something like that, why not try and achieve something that's very similar but for a different cause? So the goal would kind of be to ensure, like, I mean, a 3-term long bus pass is nearly £400 for students. And a lot of students can't afford to fork that money out in like one lump sum at the beginning of the year. So they will end up, you know, paying to get the bus. Sometimes it can cost a student £4 just to get to and from campus in one day. Never mind if they want to come back to campus to do some sort of extracurricular activity, that could be £8 for a day, which I think's absolutely ridiculous. And I just think if there is money for the Sports Access Fund, there's money for obviously the new building that's been proposed and in the works, I believe that we can find money for this. And it would basically be, so the uni would have a sum of money, we'd buy up some Stagecoach tickets, whether that be, we know, a few 3-term long ones, a few 2-term long ones, we can like make a variety of them. And then students, again, like the Sports Access Fund works, can apply for them. And then obviously they could get their bus pass for the year. And I just think I've definitely realised in recent weeks, you know, the toll that paying to get to and from campus, and even first years if they want to go into town like a lot in the week, it really takes a toll on the budget that students have at the moment. And I think it's really important that we try and help them as much with that if we can find the money for it.
Yeah, speaking of the money, one of the main things you've pointed out is the Sports Access Fund.
Yes.
Now, speaking from, I'm on Societies Committee, so I can say that the Sport Access Fund was funded through an anonymous donation given to university. I think it was roughly of £180,000, covering the next kind of 5 years.
Yeah.
So obviously this was an alumni giving a donation.
Yeah.
Now, in terms of actual funding, where would you be looking from? Would you be looking more a case of appealing to alumni?
Yeah.
Would you be going directly to the university itself? And obviously with a lot of these things, it's a case of sustainability. How are you going to ensure that this lasts beyond kind of your term as president if you were elected, you know, so that it's lasting for 4 or 5 years and beyond? How would you ensure that?
Yeah, obviously I would do everything I can. I wouldn't go one way or another. I would appeal to alumni, I would speak to the Vice Chancellor, I'd speak to university management, I would take it to things like the trustee board, I would take it to council, I would explore every avenue I possibly could. And on the longevity issue, ensuring it lasts, I think an important thing to do is gather student opinion. So whether that be create surveys, ask students, you know, create meetings and open spaces where they come and sort of we talk about the toll it's having and the impact it has on them. I think once we have that evidence and that proof that it really does affect students, especially in the current economic climate that we're in, I reckon that will ensure the lasting of that and it will ensure the progress. And definitely if it's something I can achieve, I can definitely see that future officers or, you know, future campaigning and initiatives for student costs of living crises, they are going to want to continue that because again, it's been an ongoing issue we've had with buses and Stagecoach and pricing. So if we can actually do something about that, I don't see why it would not want to carry on being implemented in the future to prevent that problem happening again.
Mm-hmm. Now, I know it's not directly on your manifesto, but I think it certainly ties to the later points that you mentioned. Obviously, at the minute there is a cost of living crisis, and this is affecting students through a variety of different ways. One of the ways kind of being accommodation.
Yes.
Now, the current president has been in discussions both with the university and also UPP, who are currently under contract and I think own roughly 2/3 of the accommodation on campus. And they're trying to reach an agreement to overall try and make sure there's more affordable accommodation.
Yeah.
Is this something you would continue to do even if an initial agreement is made? I.e. there's an agreement made, there's more affordable accommodation. Would you continue to put pressure on UPP and would you continue to try and get the university, the SU and UPP to kind of discuss pricing, discuss affordability? Because ultimately, you know, some students could end up, you know, almost, I wouldn't want to say they were necessarily priced out, but it's a case of because of the increasing costs of accommodation, it could be argued that it's becoming more and more and more expensive to be a student, certainly if you wish to live on campus.
Yeah, it's definitely, I have thought about this, and it's in my sort of secondary points on my manifesto at the minute. I would definitely help work to ensure rent can be controlled. I'm not sure if bringing it down is that realistic at the moment, especially with, it's sort of a national cost of living crisis, so that's the main problem as to why rent increases anyway. So I think it would be sort of maybe working towards rent freezing, making sure, okay, let's look at actually making sure these prices don't go up too much anymore, because we've seen year upon year the massive and drastic increases in pricing, and unfortunately it might deter students from wanting to live on campus or even maybe coming to the university. I saw, obviously, this was in my second year now, last year, they did set up a tenants union where they were discussing the premise of sort of rent freezing and freezing rents, and it gathered quite a lot of momentum. So maybe it would be sort of helping, making sure that can be set up again, and we can have actually students being involved actively in campaigning and in, campus activism towards making sure, well, let's freeze the rents where they are, let's make sure we don't have any more drastic increases, because it's not livable, it's not feasible for upcoming and current students. So yeah, that's definitely something I would continue to work towards.
Yeah. Now, finally, is there anything else either about your manifesto, any further points you'd either like to bring up, or is there anything about your candidacy for the role of president that you'd like to kind of mention or drive home at all?
Just sort of everyone read my manifesto, look at my experience, because I think that experience speaks louder than anything else. I mean, I've sort of been building towards this for 2.5 years now. I've been on the JCR since in my first year. I don't believe there's anyone really that can have more experience, knowledge and drive that I have. So yeah, vote for me for LUSU President. I would love to represent everyone.
Well, thank you ever so much for your time, and
Thank you
for the interview.
Thank you very much. Thank you.